Well, hello everyone. Thank you for joining our webinar on ASSETjourney AMP, how to beat the asset management plan deadline that's coming up on July 1st this year. It's only a few months away. So we'll be talking about that in detail. We'll get into that in a moment. Right now, I'll give you some information about the webinar before we get going. One is that there is a question screen on the webinar panel. There's a question option there. You can always add in a question or put in a chat there if you want to answer the question. And we'll try and get to the questions during the webinar. If we can't during it, we'll answer it by email afterwards, okay? And then also we will have a recording available of this webinar, and we'll send the link out to everybody who registered. And you'll have that in a day or two, follow-up email. We'll get that to you in a day or two with the link to the recording if you want that. You can open it up and take a look. Usually we post it up on YouTube. Okay, just a few people trickling in, but I think we've got a pretty good crowd, so we're just going to jump right into it right now and get going on the webinar. So the first thing is, come on, get my screen up here. Yeah, let me go over to it again. There we go. Okay. Let me introduce myself. I am Scott Restivo, President and CEO of Crocan Software. We're based in California in the Bay Area. That's where I am right now. It's 5 p.m. on the day before Wednesday here. And I'm giving this webinar along with Aidan O'Flaherty from Tulich Communities down in Sydney. Now, the two of us, actually our two companies, got together and created this asset journey. Aidan had the same problem that everybody has of having to meet the legislative requirements of the Retirement Villages Act, and he got in touch with us. He knew about our asset management program, and he talked to us about adapting it specifically to meet the legislative requirements as well as help manage villages in general. And we were glad to work with him on that, and we came up with ASSETjourney. Been around probably almost a year now, I think. Time flies, so maybe about a year now. And so we'll go through what's required here. And then Aidan, the way it'll work is I'll be on for a little bit with some PowerPoint slides, give an overview, and then Aidan will jump on and show you the actual program itself, which we feel is the best solution for this requirement to have an AMP in place. We adapted it specifically for that. It was built through the incredible input from not only Aidan, but also other people in his community there, the Tulich communities. So it's really meant specifically to meet the requirements of the Act. It's going to help, in other words, help you meet this deadline as much as possible with as little fuss as possible. It's coming up fast, July 1st. So let's go through this. AMP, or ASSETjourney AMP, Asset Management Plan, works on any kind of device, whether it's a desktop, a tablet, or a mobile. Mobile is quite important in the maintenance world, part of it, but we do work on all three form factors. Okay, the asset management plan is a mandate from the government to have it in place by July 1st. But actually, you have to have something in place for residents to review before that. So I'll go into that in a moment. So July 1st, we certainly can meet it if you get going right now, and you'll get in touch with us and get things going. I mean, you're attending this webinar. It's a good first start. So see what we can do after that to get you going on this. It's required by the Retirement Villages Act of 1999 and also the revisions in 2017. Currently only applies to New South Wales, but we're already getting inquiries from Queensland and South Australia and even Western Australia about how this is going to most likely apply to those states also in the near future. Maybe not exactly the same way, but fairly similar, perhaps even over in New Zealand. So we'll see how that goes. But right now, the legislation applies to New South Wales. There's some links at the bottom about from the government goes into quite a bit of detail about the plans. And it was a very valuable resource for us as we have built the asset management plan to meet those specific requirements and guidelines of the secretary and what they're putting out from that office. So it has to have, the asset management plan has to have an asset register, has to have a maintenance schedule of actual and estimated maintenance, and a 3-year report of capital maintenance and expenditures, and it must be available to the residents for review. Now that can be available electronically. It does not have to be available printout. So electronically, you can have that available. Now the thing is, what is a major, what has to be included in this? Well, anything is a major item of capital is an asset that is over equal to or over $1,000 there. So you don't have to list every asset in your asset register. Some people do, and they use our program for that quite successfully. Other people only want to meet the legislative requirements of the $1,000 or more major item of capital. You have to put the effective life of that. How do you get the effective life? Well, their ATO has tables on various pieces of equipment, and you can input that in. And any assets that's shared must have percentages attributed correctly. So like in Aiden's situation, he has one place, I think it's 50-50 or 25-75 between retirement village and aged care and that kind of thing. And the important thing here is that according to the law anyway, operators cannot charge residents for maintenance or repairs of one of these $1,000 or more pieces of equipment if it's not in the asset register. So definitely you want to get it in the asset register, get it in there, and so you can have a justification and not any feedback from the residents if you go to repair it. Okay. So then the other thing you have to have in there are maintenance schedules. This sets the details for maintaining and replacing the major items of capital, and about planned maintenance, repairs, replacement activities. It really breaks down into preventative maintenance and reactive maintenance. Preventative, you estimate what the best you can based on historical information or just best guesswork sometimes on what's going to take for preventative maintenance. And reactive, of course, you can kind of sort of, but it's really something that just comes out of the actual repair, actual activity of the repair that's needed. So if any of this is like, let's be frank, I mean, we've been doing this for like a year now and looking at legislation, and some of it is not all 100% clear on what you're supposed to do. So we try our best. We interpret the legislation. Aiden has a lot of experience in it. At his group, he's implemented it, and plus we're gaining a lot of experience as we implement more and more of these. So we were here to help you understand this law to the best of our ability. So we're not only a resource for AMP, we're also a resource to help figure out what the heck you're supposed to do with it, right? So 3-year report for capital maintenance. That's the other part of the plan. And each asset, you need like I say, the cost age type of proposed maintenance and the any proposed repairs, and any asset within 1 year of effective life. It's a 10-year effective life. You're in the 10th year, the 9th year, I guess. Then you have, you can replace it. You have to put in the budget, and the assets would accumulate costs greater than 90% of the purchase price. So in other words, it took so much money to repair this particular asset, then over 90%, you spent $1,500 on it, and now it costs you I don't know, something like $1,400 to repair it. Well, you have all the rights to replace it, even if it's not at the end of its effective life. And then there has to be an independent assessment of that. We've gone through that several times in different villages, and our AMP certainly meets all the requirements. One thing there at the bottom point, it's pretty important. The residents have 60 days to review and comment. And what that means is that if you do it, I think it comes out to May 2nd. You could call it May 1st, May 2nd. It's really, I mean, only about a month from now, you're supposed to have this together for residents to review. I don't know how strict that 60-day period is, but it is there in the legislation. And in our AMP, we developed a resident feedback form, because there's actually very specific requirements about tying the resident feedback to a particular report, and then recording what adjustments you made due to that resident feedback. Either you said that was irrelevant, or it was important and you incorporated a change to the report. Any of that's all recorded in our AMP as part of our resident feedback portion of it. So helping you keep compliant with all the legislative requirements there. AMP must be kept up to date. When you buy something new, that's a major item of capital. You got to put it in there. I mean, I think it gives you a few days, but basically pretty much right away. Any maintenance or repair, all that's tracked in our maintenance task part of the AMP. If the 3-year report is amended for some reason, you got to update it. And if total estimated maintenance costs likely to increase by 25% or more than you originally estimated, you got to redo the asset management plan. Like I said earlier, all these have to be available to the residents. They're easily available just by electronically through the reports we produce in the AMP. Makes it easy. How do you put it in place? How do you prepare one? It's a 5-step guide. Kind of generally works in some degree with our partners there. MDFM came up, and so we're using some of their information here, and you could also go to the link, get all the details. So basically, one is determine what system you will use. I always joke around and say that's easy. Use ASSETjourney, but of course you have to decide what asset management plan you're going to use, and hopefully you'll find ASSETjourney fits the bill. And then you have to capture the asset data. We find people all range. Some people have it already in there. Already have a pretty good system, but actually I have to be honest, the majority of people don't really have that organized a system on the asset data yet. So if you do, you're lucky. If you're not, don't feel bad. You're in the same boat as most of the other operators. Then you import the asset data. We provide import templates, configuration templates. You load the data in that. We do the import. Takes pretty quick. Gets the data into the asset register, and then once it's in the asset register, our system is able to produce the reports because it's relying on data. You just once the assets are loaded, push a button, you get the required report. One button per report, literally speaking, but you get the reports out right away. Our system's all configured to take that data and turn it into the reports you need once you have it in there. And that's how you prepare the maintenance schedule. And then this is the point that I think it's okay to add on here about you have to keep this AMP going. So you have to have resources to update it, like add new assets or add the maintenance tasks and keep it up to date. From just something we can talk more about if you want to. Our ASSETjourney AMP meets all the legislative requirements. Plus, it's not just that. You can include any asset, not just the ones over $1,000. We have maintenance task section. We have an import template and a configuration template for helping you get going. We're highly customizable. We run on Office 365. If you don't have Office 365 in place, that's fine. We can do a hosted version of it. And what Crow Canyon has been doing, our company here, building applications on the Microsoft platform for many, many years. We're very familiar with all the ins and outs of that. And the way it works is that it's highly customizable because we have built a platform. We have what we call Nitro Studio, which is a platform on top of Office 365 that provides tremendous power to build forms, workflows, actions, notifications, reports, printouts, and all these kind of things. So we turn Office 365 into a true business process automation platform. It's kind of our tagline, you might say. And we did that for the Asset AMP such that the program you get is very flexible and configurable because every village is a little different. Some people have one village, some people have three, some people have multiple buildings. So it's all over the place, as you well know if you're in this industry. And the other point here, the very important, is that with our Nitro Studio and the way we built it, we can integrate with third-party systems. This is a great element that a lot of people are interested in. They may have a maintenance program in place already. They may have an ERP system in place, an accounting system. We can integrate with any of those through the web services and REST API if you want to get technical on how our Nitro Studio, which underlies the AMP, can be set up to, configure. It's usually pretty simple configurations to connect to outside data, outside platforms, and bring that information in. And so it isn't like standing on its own. The ASSETjourney AMP, it now becomes part of your whole system. It helps amplify and improve whatever you have in place there, and while also meeting all the legislative requirements. Now, in addition to this ASSETjourney AMP, we provide a work order option for people who want a maintenance program. Some people have a basic one or minimal one in place. Some people have a whole full-blown system in place. So wherever you are in it, you may want to keep the full-blown going, or you may want to, whatever you want to do. But we offer this work order option as one of our programs. We developed this, we've had this going for several years, many years before ASSETjourney even, and we had this work order. People purchase it from us and use this work order program because they want to track time, parts, costs, time logs, that kind of thing. It's more like really a true full-fledged work order system, work order management system. But like I say, we do include an element of maintenance tasks inside the AMP out of the box. So it depends where you are. We can discuss what your needs are on that. But just another point that we are not just the AMP, but we can expand beyond that if needed. If you just want to meet the legislative requirements, that's perfectly fine also. So another last point before I turn it over to Aiden is that we are, again, the integration with all the Microsoft Office capabilities, which include Microsoft Teams if you're using that. So, something you can really grow with our program, because Office 365, probably most people just adopted that in the last year or two. And there's a tremendous amount of things you can do with Office 365, not only for AMP, but for other purposes. And our program will adapt quite well and will help you bring this, bring your asset register, your AMP program into Office 365 and be able to integrate all these business process automation along with it, as well as all the integrations I just talked about with many different programs you might have in place already, ERPs and databases and invoicing systems and that kind of thing. So with that said, I'll pass it over to Aiden. And he's going to show you the program, the actual program itself. I just want to make a point that we're very glad to meet anyone one-on-one and give a demo, talk about your particular needs. We realize everyone's situation is a little bit different. You all have to meet the legislative requirements, but everybody has a slightly different environment or situation. And we actually personally, it's not even exaggerating. I say I really like talking to people about this and finding out what their needs are, and find it quite fascinating, actually. So hopefully we can help you out. Aiden, you want to take over from here and go with, nice to see it. Somebody asked about seeing a demo on work orders. We want to show the ASSETjourney AMP first, and then we'll go over to work orders at the end of the day. If someone wants to, at the end of the webinar, if someone wants to see that more directly, we can do that one-on-one. We'll try and get to what we can today of the work orders. It's a question I'm answering here. Someone put in about seeing a demo on work orders. We're trying to get to that, right?
Yeah, we'll try and get to it. I'll go through the main site. I guess when you start looking at work orders and the maintenance in general and extending it as a global maintenance system where you're obviously using external or internal, there is a work order add-on, which I think is on the screen at the minute, work order option available.
I just passed the screen.
So show my screen. So can you guys see that?
I can, yes. I think imagine everyone else can. If someone can't, just put it in chat, but I think we're good. Okay, Aiden, you can take it from here.
Great. So I guess just by way of introduction, so my name's Aiden. So I am part of 6 villages in New South Wales as part of the Tulich Group. We picked up on this potential legislation about a year and a half ago, tried to create it in Excel spreadsheets and other various ways, and it just didn't work out. Then the actual legislation came out and the level of detail required was far beyond where we ever thought it was going to be, as I'm sure you're all aware. And at that point, that's when I reached out to Scott, and this is where it all came about, which I'll show you through. I think the key for me at the minute is timing. I guess we basically have to get these reports out by the 30th of April. So we've had quite an influx of people signing up at the minute and going through that process, which I'll go through later on. But the key is, I guess we basically have 30 days to basically get our reports done, dusted, review them, send them out to residents for their 60-day feedback period. And that's what we're sort of all working on at the minute. So this is what ASSETjourney looks like, okay? So this is the front screen. You'll see at the top here, this is obviously a demo site, so it doesn't have all their assets in. So we use it as all our facilities. Just as a snapshot, at our Penrith facility, there's about 3,500 assets at the minute. So this is what it looks like. As you scroll down, it gives you little dashboards, assets by category, assets by status, if they're active, inactive, and by department, which I'll go through. And then essentially you have all your assets down the bottom here. It's like a snapshot. And because it's Office 365, it's very customizable, so you can sort of swap and move categories, you can sort them. So I just want to see what's in this building or this room, for example. That's just sort of a bit of functionality that sits there anyway for you to use. Then down the left and up the top is the categories. So obviously assets is where you put your assets in. You can search assets and do some admin on your assets. Then you have maintenance tasks, which you can actually put all your maintenance and repairs in for your assets over $1,000 or beyond, which I'll go through. Required reports is the legislative reports. So if you click into there, you see these legislative reports, which I'll go through. Report center is more general reports. Suppliers essentially is your contractors. You can put all your contracts in here and track warranties and things like that, so that you're not having to worry about that. And resident feedback I'll come back to. So what I like to sort of show people is essentially adding a new asset, right? So you basically go to new asset, it will load, and then, okay, and then it comes to this screen. And essentially adding a new asset, you go on one screen, you don't have to move off the screen, and you move through the tabs. Just before I do this, just for clarity, I guess when people sign up with ASSETjourney, they essentially get an import template, which is an Excel spreadsheet with all the fields required for every asset. That gets filled out in Excel and is uploaded, which Scott would have said earlier on. So you're not doing this process for every single asset. It's more your assets are actually already in there. You would do this process for adding a new asset. But what it will give you is a good feel for, I guess, how we've built the program, the stuff it includes, and I guess the items you need on that import template and information the legislation requires. So adding a new asset, you pretty much say what it is. So let's just say it's a dishwasher. You can give it a description if you want to. Description. You can give it a condition: very poor, poor, fair, good, excellent, which is based on, I think if you Google asset condition, there's these things and it tells you certain things about useful life and how long they should last based on their condition. Reporting type is purely legislative. So if you go into the legislation, you have 3 types of reporting. You have individual, which is self-explanatory. You have group, which is you can group items. And so if you do decide to group items, you can group them here. So for example, this dishwasher I might group in the FY21 dishwasher. Technically I can't now because I'm in FY22, so I'd have to actually create a new group, which you just do here. So I'd create an FY22 dishwasher group. So the key with grouping is all the assets in the group have to have a similar effective life. They each have to be over $1,000, which is key. Not the group is $1,000. Each asset in the group is over $1,000, and they're bought in the same financial year. So if those 3 things pass, then you can basically create a group. And just as an example, in our facility, so because we basically built in 2 stages. We built one stage in FY20, one stage in FY21. A lot of the stuff in the ILUs, for example, dishwashers, ovens, fridges, I've grouped all them. So I went FY20 fridges, FY21 fridges, and I've grouped depending on when they were bought. That's sort of grouping. And then construction items is obviously more your structural items. So your buildings, your, for example, we put our fire systems in there, we put our sewerage in there, things like that. 10-year plan start date is set because it's going to be 1st of July for most. Underneath there's other asset information. So you can give it a category, which is more for reporting. You can say whether it's active or inactive. Obviously they're going to start out active, but as you remove them, you make them inactive. There's the make, model, serial number, which again is legislative, goes through to the reports. You can put other links in here. You know, someone asked about barcoding the other day and we added that box. So again, and that's an example of, I guess, as Scott was saying, it's customizable. So because it's Office 365 and Microsoft, you know, behind the scenes of what we're looking at, you can actually, if you're quite IT savvy, or not even because I can even do it, right? You can go behind the scenes and create boxes and drop downs and, you know, things like that that suit your village. So it's not as if it's just out of the box, here you go, just deal with it. You guys might say, oh, well, this is how we do it in our village, and then we can sort of build it during that setup phase to be for your village. Next, you move to the location page. So there's 2 elements of your location. It's where is it? So ours is set up like this, building, location, room. But again, through that initial phase, our clients are saying, well, we don't want building, we just want room. Or we want location, room, we don't want building. So it's very customizable to you guys. This is based on our facility in Penrith. So we have 4 buildings. So in building C, there is basement and 6 levels. In building C level 1, there's some ILUs, there's hair salon, honesty bar. So I've just got to pick where it is. That's the first part. The second part is your department, which is here. Now, the legislation says if you share an item, you have to say who it's shared with and the percentage. And this is the basis of what this is built for. But basically, a lot of your items are going to be village only. And for people who are not co-located and don't have aged care, it's pretty much going to be that unless you share with corporate or something like that. For those of you who are co-located or have other sort of structures, for example, like we do, not a lot of them, 80% of our items are village, but probably 15% are like this, aged care village. And because it's shared with the aged care, you put percentages here. So it's shared 50-50. And this wording here, again, is changeable per what you guys want. That for us stands for aged care, that's village in our world. So it's 50-50. Or similarly, you might have, and this is what we do it for, we actually track all our aged care items in there. So nothing to do with this legislation. We put all our beds, mattresses, side tables, TVs, and the aged care in there. It doesn't come through to the reporting for legislative purposes, obviously, but still we use this for tracking and maintaining our aged care items. Similarly, we actually use it for resident-owned items. So for all those alterations that happen or residents bringing in their own stuff that technically we're not responsible for as operators, we actually allocate them to resident-owned so that there's a tracker of it, number one. Number two, if any sort of maintenance request comes through for those items, straight away you can see it's actually not our responsibility. Let's move it back to, say, village aged care for now. So that's your sort of base asset information. Obviously, I'm going through this in detail. So in reality, filling out that information is like a minute job, basically, if that. And you move through to finance, and what's finance doing? You're basically saying, when was it bought? So let's just say it's bought then, how much it was bought for, $1,200, the effective life in years. And because I've added a dishwasher before, it remembers that it's 8 years. And then your proposed date of capital replacement is actually a pre-calculated box in there, which is purchase date plus effective life equals proposed date of capital replacement. Now, you can override that if you want. I guess what we're saying to people when they do their import template is just, especially for the older villages, if you look at purchase date plus effective life, for all those older villages, there's sometimes a lot of assets which actually this date is in the past. So then it's making sure you update that and then having obviously reasonable explanation of why you're continuing to maintain it, which I'll go through in the next screen. That's your financial information. Again, legislatively, you need actual cost of replacement and actual replacement date, but you only do that obviously when you replace it. Maintenance tab, so I'll go through the main bit. So this top section I'll come back to. But the second section is basically a 10-year plan. So you have your 10-year maintenance plan here, and you have a 10-year repair plan here. So again, this is all in your import template. So on your import template, you can sort of put the figures in and play with them, make sure it's some way relevant to your budget, for example, before you upload it. But adding a new asset, you would actually fill this in. So this is a dishwasher. We don't have preventive maintenance on dishwashers, so it would actually be 0 for the 10-year plan. But just say it wasn't, and it was $100, $105, $110, for example, CPI. It totals your 10-year here, and it splits it between your percentages that we did on the first screen. Similarly, your repairs is the same. So this is a dishwasher, so we might say it's about 150 every 2 years, for example. Again, it totals it and gives you a split. So in terms of adding an asset, that's what you need to do. Right, you save it, it goes into your asset list, it's in there, it's in your asset register. Again, flipping back to the import template, all that stuff is on the import template, and you basically fill it in Excel, review it, make sure you're happy with it, it gets uploaded, everything's in there. That's sort of the first element of assets. The second one is the maintenance. So obviously, as part of this legislation, every time you maintain and repair an asset over $1,000, you have to track certain information and then report accordingly on it in a dedicated report. So we have built in here that you can actually do that. So just as an example, I'll go into this dishwasher. There's 2 ways of doing it. You can actually find the asset and just add tasks to it, which is pretty much what I'm doing here. You go into the dishwasher, you edit it, you go to the maintenance tab, and you can add a task, right? So as you can see here, we've done a couple of preventative maintenance tasks on it, a couple of repair tasks. And it's as simple as going in and going, right, did I do maintenance or repairs? I'll add a new task. You say what you did. So I fixed the door. It was reactive. It cost $230. The date it was completed was yesterday. Task status is completed. It's already given it the building location room because we're already within the asset. You can put comments in. And save it. And then it basically gets added. So at any given point, you can basically go into any asset at all, go in there and see exactly what repairs has happened to it, exactly what maintenance has happened to it. Now, the cool thing with this is if you scroll down the bottom, it actually tracks the accumulation. So at any given point, you can see exactly how much repairs you've done on it and the percentage versus purchase price, which is key to obviously the legislation, because once that hits 90%, you need to make this decision, maintain or replace. And if you're going to maintain it, you've got to obviously have some sort of reasoning behind it, because from all my discussions with a lot of people, and I guess what I'm thinking is that's going to be where your resident questions come, is it's out of effective life or you've done 90%, why are you continuing to maintain it and not replace it? So that's a good little checker there. You can go in any asset and see this percentage, and that also flows through to the reporting. That's one way of doing it. Now, the other way, that way I just showed you is more the end product. So you basically, in an operator world, basically you have an invoice for the maintenance and you go in and you just fill it in with the cost. Now, what this system also does is a bit of value add, so it's not just a compliance tool, is you can actually do all your internal maintenance in here. If you go to maintenance tasks, you can actually have a listing of all the maintenance tasks that need to be done or not started or completed. And so, for example, our maintenance guy has all his tasks in there. So just imagine I'm the maintenance guy, that's me. So I have all these tasks. And when you set it up, you'd only see your tasks. So I would see all my tasks here. Looks like I've completed all of them, but I haven't started 2 of them. So I need to change the filter on this dishwasher, and I need to, so it becomes more of a maintenance management tool as well, if you want to use it for that purpose. All the way through from putting a maintenance request in to the job getting done, comments being put in, it getting closed, and put a price in. That's sort of the very summarized version of the workflow. So what do you do in that sense? Essentially, it's the same thing. You add a new task, and it's the same screen that we just looked at. And again, so you put your task name, task type. If you're using it as a maintenance workflow, you might not actually know the cost yet, so you just leave that blank. You're more doing the start date and due date. When it's due, you assign it to someone. If it's external, you can assign it to a supplier if you want. And then once you have the information, the email will actually link. It's in there, not in there. Give it a priority if it's high or urgent, and you leave it and not started. This is where you, because you went through this way, you actually give it a where it is. It's in building C level 1 honesty bar, and there's a couple of assets in there. And you save it, and then that goes through the maintenance workflow. Once it's completed, you change it to complete, and then it floats through to your reports. So the key for us as well is, I guess, and other people who have signed up, some people are using it for compliance and just saying, right, I only want to deal with assets over $1,000, which is fine. We're using it more as a general maintenance tool. So we're actually tracking all our maintenance and repairs of all our assets in here, whether they're over 1,000, less than 1,000, aged care, village, non-village, doesn't matter, because essentially it's a great tracker of everything that's happened, and the reporting is good in terms of what needs to be done, what's overdue. So we use it quite heavily in our management as well to try and work out exactly what's going on with the maintenance. So we've actually moved all our maintenance over to it in full. And then the bonus on top is all your compliant report comes out, which is great. So that's your maintenance. So I guess what's the end goal? The end goal is the reports, right? So in the summary, you have a couple of reports. So you have your asset register, you have your maintenance schedule estimated, which is your 10-year plan. You have your 3-year report, which is the report that now needs to go out every year with your budget. As part of your 3-year report, these are the key reports, I think, that will be the ones that get the most questions and the ones you've got to be most prepared on, is these two. So along with your 3-year report, you also run your 3-year report items with a year or less of effective life, and it will spit out all the items that have 1 year or less of effective life, and then you have to make that maintain or replace decision, and then obviously have some sort of reasoning behind it in your process for when questions come. Similarly, the 90% one. So if the repairs reaches 90% of the purchase price, it pops into that report. Similar, you've got to obviously highlight that and make a decision of maintain and replace. Where I actually see this going is with the 3-year reports. Once something hits 90%, it's going to be relatively hard to, not in all cases, to continue to maintain it. There's going to be a strong replace argument by the residents, whereas the year or less of effective life, it has so many variables depending on what's happened to it during its life, whether it's even been used, for example, it's just been sitting there, it's been in a storeroom, whatever it might be. That's your 3-year report. And then your maintenance schedule actual, which is basically the tracking of every maintenance and repairs of those assets over $1,000. So that's pretty much ASSETjourney as a base. I guess what I'll do is run some reports so you guys can have a look at them. And then I'll just talk briefly about just a global overview. And then if Scott has time, he might go into a bit of the work orders, but I don't know. The work orders is quite extensive, so if you are interested in that more extensive global work order system where you're involving external suppliers who can talk to the system and things like that, definitely booking a demo to see that side. So I'm running the asset register here. So this is all preset. So village address will be in there. The filters in there, because as I said, so for example, we have assets under $1,000 in there. So you put $1,000 in to make sure only what's required comes through. Generate report, it comes through to Excel immediately. You open it in Excel, and this is what the report looks like. So the report basically has a little heading. It's split between 3 sections. You have your individual items here. Underneath it, you have your group items, so FY23 dishwasher, all that sort of stuff, and your building structure construction parts underneath. And so what does the asset register show you? In very legislative this, so if you read the legislation, you're pretty much just reading what I've got here. You have an asset ID number, asset description, room. So for clarity, room is not in the legislation as being required. We've got it in there because it just makes sense. But obviously, if you guys decide you want to remove that one, you could, because it's not legislatively required. Brand model, serial model, when it was bought, the purchase price, the effective life, the remaining effective life. Just noting when that goes to less than 1, it pops into the 3-year report. Remember about maintain, replace. If it's shared, who it's shared with. So in this case, this one's shared with our aged care, and it's 20% applicable to the village. So that's pretty much your asset register. Obviously, any group items get grouped. So all the computers in FY23 that we put in here, total purchase 10,000. Just noting that because of when you put it in, it goes in as an individual item. So even though it's grouped for reporting purposes, it's still in there individually for maintaining and repairing purposes. So yeah, that's your asset register. So again, go through the life journey of coming on board. So because there's an import template, all this stuff is in your import template. So you basically get that information in there, it gets imported and uploaded. You basically have your asset register, what you're looking at now. That's your asset register. Then if I just go to required reports, 10-year plan. Number 1, 1,000, generate detailed report. So again, it flips into Excel. And similar thing. So same structure with the 3 sections. Again, what is it? You need asset ID, what it is, then you have your 10-year plan. So let's just look at this Bosch washer. So year 1 is 100, 105, 110. So we've put that by CPI here. So for your 10 years up to year 10, it totals it. Then you have to say what the proposed frequency of maintenance in. Obviously, if you have a 10-year preventative maintenance plan, it'll have a figure. If it doesn't, it probably won't. Type of maintenance is preset as cyclical. You've got to have that in per legislation, but you can change what that says. Repairs, year 1, 2, 3, so on and so forth, to year 10, total. Then your further legislation, you need to put the date of proposed repairs and description of repairs. But who knows until you do it? So you can just put whatever you think in there. We've preset it for that. If you want to change it, that's fine. If shared, the percentage and the proposed date of replacement. So this is where just making sure that when you're doing an import, you're reviewing that date and making sure there's no dates in the past, essentially. So that's your 10-year report. Your 3-year report is basically exactly what we just looked at. It's just 3 years, and then every year it just moves on. I guess what I like to have a look at. So just as an example of this 3-year, part of the 3-year report, and this will give you what the 3-year report looks like anyway. I hope we've got some items in here. I'm pretty sure we do. So this is the 3-year report of items that have reached 90%. So you basically have your asset ID, what it is, and then the percentage. So these pop out because it's hit over 90%. So we've spent 93% repairs versus purchase price. So I guess if you decide to replace it, your year 1, 2, and 3 is going to be 0. In this case, we've said, no, we're going to continue to maintain it. So we've done a 3-year plan. We've done a 3-year repair plan, and we've said the percentage. And at the back end here, you would put maintain, basically, which will filter from the system once you do it in the import template. But it's really just highlighting those items so that you can have that forward conversation. And I believe you can set, and Scott, jump in if I'm not talking correctly, I believe you can set notifications to give you a little nudge earlier so you're prepared for those conversations. That's your 3-year report.
Yes.
So that's pretty much your reporting. So this is the legislative reports that, you know, the way I like to explain to people is, once your assets are in there, you do 4 things. When you add an asset, when you buy an asset, add it. When you remove an asset, make it inactive. All the maintenance and repairs of assets over $1,000 you do, complete it in there, then your reports will always be up to date. As I said, we sort of get a bit more value out of it in terms of we actually use it for our full maintenance of everything, and using it for our maintenance team and a tracker and management reporting, not just doing stuff over $1,000. So that's pretty much ASSETjourney. I guess what we like to do is, obviously, if people want a demo, please reach out, because what we do in a demo, which is different to this, is we sort of look at your village and work out, okay, well, how would we customize this to your village, which is pretty much what we can do. Because in that life journey of, okay, what happens when you sign up? So when you sign up, there's essentially a setup phase where Scott and his team put this on your Office 365 or hosted version, as he said. Then there's a customization phase, which is that conversation of, okay, well, do you have aged care? Do you share assets? What's your village name? All that sort of stuff. Is there any sort of extra special requirements that you guys do that we need to set up? And you customize it for your village. Next step is import template. So you get all your stuff in the import template, import it. Then you basically, from day one, have your asset register, maintenance schedule, and 3-year report. And then away you go. I guess there is a training element if required, which can be twofold. There's a process-based training, which is basically the stuff I'm going through. But there's also a deeper level sort of, I guess, I don't know what to call it, IT training, where you can be taught about how to sort of go in and add boxes and add forms, sort of like this one, which I'll go through. Resident feedback. So we just added this one. It'll sort of give you a bit of functionality of what you can add. So per the legislation, there's a 60-day feedback period, and you have to record certain things per the legislation. And that's what this resident feedback one is. But basically, you go in here and you can record the feedback, title, resident, what they said, a couple of other items. Was the draft AMP revised, yes or no, and some comments. So a good example of where we're actually going to expand this for our village is we're actually going to start putting our residents in there and tracking comments and complaints. And then we're looking to extend it further than that. So we're actually looking to have this more as a village management tool, not just a AMP compliance tool. But it sort of gives you a bit of a snapshot of, I guess, the value add and where you can go with it. As Scott said earlier on, there is a work order for maintenance. So what I just showed you is more task-based. You can add tasks. You can sort of do your internal maintenance on it. But when you start going into that broader world of external maintenance and suppliers and connecting with them, there's a broader work order. So I think that's pretty much the, I guess, asset journey. The process, I guess, from setup, customization, import, and away you go. I guess, as I said at the start, the key for me is timing. So we have pretty much a month, essentially, but we don't really, because I guess you really want your reports done and dusted in sort of 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks, so that you have at least a week to sort of prep, make sure it all makes sense, prep all the sort of documents that need to go out when you send it, and then also sort of have your question list of all the questions you think will come up based on the plan and have some sort of explanation behind it. And that's the process we're going through as well. You know, so ours are ready. We haven't sent them out yet because we're just going through that that process of, okay, well, what questions will come up, make sure we're prepared, all that stuff. So I think that, look, that's about all I need to go through. As I said, book a demo and we can go into more in depth compared to your village, but I think it gives you a good snapshot of what it does.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to quickly go through any work order stuff, Scott. I know there's not long left, but.
Yeah. Well, I think I can go through that, and if anyone's asking about pricing, we can give a, it's hard to say right over during the webinar, but basically it's priced per village. Village being, you might have one village, you might have multiple villages, And then, of course, with more and more villages in your situation, the price per village goes down because of economy of scale there. And there's a setup fee, some professional services, but everybody's finding it pretty reasonable compared to what's out there for the value you get. But we can talk about that individually.
Yeah, and I might just run. I know you've answered some of these questions, but I might just run through the questions for other people's benefit. So I say work orders. Yep, we can obviously have a look at that. Does ASSETjourney integrate with Attaché? Yeah, Scott said, believe it can. Funnily enough, we used to use Attaché as our last accounting software, which we moved off to another one. But he's right. It depends on whether Attaché has API, essentially.
Yeah, it probably does. It most likely does.
Can links to floor plans be incorporated for location? I love that. We've never had that one before.
Yeah, I like that idea. I like where that's going.
Yeah, so you basically can. Me and Scott have already had discussions on in that whole world of me saying, yep, we're looking to put residents in, and comments and complaints. We're also looking to put potential sales stuff in there, floor plans and inquiries.
Yeah, you can have document libraries. That's one of the things about SharePoint. You have all kinds of libraries of information about each asset, and then we get to the residents, information about the residents. So there's quite a lot of, SharePoint is well known for the a document library aspect of it. Yeah.
Yep. And then a couple of questions on Paul on mobile. So yep. So you'll be able to use it on the mobile and iPad, essentially, which is fine. Are residents able to request maintenance from Michael? What did you write, Scott? There.
I was saying that yes, it's just a matter of deciding how you want it to do. It could be sending in an email or even a phone call, and then somebody creates it automatic, or the email could be created, or set up a web page. It really depends on how you want the residents to make those requests. If they're, I've heard some people where they just walk up to the front desk and say something. Other times they phone in. Other times there's email. Other times there's, more. I guess a more sophisticated approach might be a portal kind of interface that we could put in place.
Which you've shown to me before, Scott. You could do a resident portal where they go add request and they can put details in. What I find though, our village is the details they put in still need vetting quite heavily, I guess. So it's almost like our concierge still have to do it, but it's still available. We just haven't decided to use that portal yet. Oh, I love it. More questions are coming through. What is the format of the final AMP doc that you present to the resident? Good question. So depends, I think, is the answer. So we're actually going through that at the minute of deciding exactly the format. When you look at our asset register, the format is fine to sort of print it out, essentially, and just have it on there. When you start looking at 10-year plans, it gets a bit cumbersome to print it out because essentially it's a 10-year plan that it's expanded over quite a number of columns. So we're actually looking at having, I call it a portal, or do I call it a portal? Where they can actually log in and view it.
Yeah, part of that, Aiden, that legislation says you don't have to actually print them out. You can just make them available electronically. Now you may want to print them out, but you don't have to by legislative requirements. You just have to make them available, I think, within 7 days, isn't it? 7 days?
Yeah, well, I guess the original, your asset register and your 10-year plan, pretty much. Well, if you're using ASSETjourney, it will be there live, right? So it's more. Yeah, we're working on a way of releasing a version of it upon request to a portal that someone can log in and just view it. If it becomes quite cumbersome to print out a 10-year plan, which goes over however many A3 pages to the right, or that would have to be super small. So we're still working on that, but there's various ways of doing it essentially. Can
what about the last one? Independent QS assessment. What do you think about that?
So there's just one before that. Can this be set up for each of our maintenance staff to see their tasks? Yes. So you set your maintenance people up in there, and basically when a job's assigned to them, it's assigned to them and they see their list.
That's right. It could be, you can either see all of them, or if you want, very easy to restrict the permissions according to what you want. If you want just the person to see just their, like my tasks, they would see just my task, my being the person's task. And like you're saying,
So, and then the last one, I like this last question. Would you add, if there's more questions, keep coming. I like this section. Would you add an independent QS assessment to it? So, I guess, what does the legislation say? The legislation says that you can have an independent QS, or the auditor of your village can do the audit. Now, those two things have to happen to your plan, right? So it's not, we can't, I guess, attach an independent QS assessment to this in general. I guess it's up to each village to decide whether they want to go the QS route or the independent order route or village order. Just as an example, we got our village order to do it 2 weeks ago, and it came out as compliant. Just to give everyone a bit of clarity. So the reports that came out of this were ticked off and were compliant. We decided to go into our village auditor route because number one, it was less cost prohibitive, and we felt that they had a better understanding of what a compliance audit was versus the rabbit hole of trying to then audit, are all your assets, are there, what costs were they, which becomes a massive audit. From time of acceptance, how long do we need to wait to install software? So Scott just said we can install it in a matter of days. So it's true. So I guess, again, just going through the process, the setup of installing, Scott 100% right. Then after that is customization, can happen very quickly. Import template is all dependent on you guys filling it out and having your information. If you have it all ready to go and rock and roll, then it basically can happen straight away. I guess we're in a position now where we have quite a few people in that process. We are aiming to have them all up and running in time. Even the people who signed up yesterday, for example, our aim is to get everyone up and running. But what I'd say is we're running out of time. So, you know, if you want to sign up, and we'll work through that process with you, basically to do everything we can to get you signed up in time. But I guess in general, if you have your asset stuff all together, you're going to make it. If you're struggling with your asset information, then you might be pushing it, but we're happy to have that conversation with you about how we can assist or even partially upload so you have something and then add to it later.
Yes, that's right. That's right. We have, there's time if people get going, you know, the next week or so, week or 2 weeks.
100%. I think the variable is the asset information.
Yeah, what we do, you know, this, Aiden, is we have a kickoff call where, you know, after the agreements are signed and everything, have a kickoff call and just talk about, you know, make sure we have all the everything right as far as, and then we get the installation going. That's just could be the next day, same day, whatever. And then after that, once it's installed, we do a little configuration, you know, because every village is a little different as far as building, location, room, or maybe they don't need, some things are shared, some things aren't. All those little bits and bobs, as you say, Aiden, to make it so it's personalized for that village or group of villages. Then after that's in place, it's just a matter of sitting there waiting for the assets to be loaded up. And once the assets are loaded up via the import template, then it's bada bing, good to go. The thing that takes time is getting the assets in shape, right, Aiden? I mean, you know, but
correct.
There's ways to work it. If you do one lot, say some people talk to us, say, hey, we have, you know, 38 units and everything in them is the same. I think we just had somebody talk about that yesterday or the day before. Once they create the list of assets for that one unit, they can replicate it by copy paste 38 times quite easily.
Yeah, correct.
It could be 100 times, it doesn't matter. And so those kind of things are tricks that can help speed the population of the import template. And we're here to help with any questions. Aiden's an amazing resource. I have to give you credit there about figuring out what is needed and what isn't, and what makes sense and what doesn't. So, you know, he's always glad to help you with that import template because it's
100%. 100%. And it's even like we get like questions about grouping and stuff like that, and what should I group and not group, and I'm happy to jump on and tell you what we did and give some advice and decide whether you guys want to do it. And sometimes it's all about visibility, about what's on the report. So yeah, I guess that's, and so I guess, yeah, the other one is just I guess a lot of people we talk to are in sort of two boats. It's people who, I guess, aren't happy with their maintenance currently, or do it manually. And this is obviously great for that, because obviously you can just jump on and do all your maintenance through here. Or you've got your people who already have maintenance and want to integrate, which, as Scott said, we can also have a look at depending on the provider. I guess those great providers that have open APIs and all that sort of stuff, it becomes a bit of an easier conversation to sort of link it, so that you can almost get all your legislative reports whilst also just continuing your normal maintenance process.
See, and the question about the mobile app, and I think I need to address that. There is no mobile app like in the App Store per se. What it is
No.
there is the advantage, the ability to use the browser to go to a portal that we provide that shows the mobile, the task. I mean, shows the task or the asset in the mobile view. So I was going to show you, looking at the screen there. One way I can, of course, I can't show a mobile phone on the during the webinar. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go to the maintenance task and see if I can pull this off during this webinar. It's kind of taking a chance here, but basically you have your form, and this is our form designer inside of Nitro Studio. Here's our, I'll just give you a little background. Underneath the ASSETjourney AMP is this Nitro Studio that comes with it. And in the Nitro Studio are a number of quite powerful apps, you could say: forms, workflows, reports, portals. It goes on, and it's amazing things you can do with creating workflows and printouts and list search, and it's quite a powerful tool. But we're going to focus just on the Nitro Forms right now, and I went to the Nitro Forms for the maintenance task. So here's the maintenance task form. Now, if somebody wanted to come in, or had us come in for some reason to put some information about integration on here, or a different title, or different things they want us to change on here, it's as easy as just coming in here, making some changes, this, that, and the other thing, and then being able to, different themes and stuff like that. Anyway, and be able to republish it and then have it available in your organization. So that's one thing that can be done quite easily with it. But what we do here is have this preview, and the preview gives you some sense of the idea of what it would look like inside of these different form factors. So here's the desktop, here's a tablet, and here's mobile. So this is something what it looks like. Now the thing is, while you're designing the form, you can make it so that, well, now I'm talking about Nitro Studio designing. I think I'm going off track a little here. Basically, this is what when you bring up the task could look like in your mobile form, and you just type something in, or it would already be filled in, probably, likely anyway, so that you would already be filled in order to just make the change, like change the status to something else, and things like that. So that's one kind of way to show what the task would look like. But you would have the portal would have ability to show, like give a nice interface where they can click. They see the list of tasks, click one, it opens up. They could see, it's something we can work with if you're interested on that, right? It's just we don't have an app, or we didn't build an app per se for this. We use the the capabilities that are inside of Office 365 to do it. Now, if somebody who really wants to get sophisticated, and we're getting a little bit out there in the weeds, we can go to Teams and use a bot. We have the Nitro bot here in Teams, and that works really well on a mobile device too. If you have Teams on mobile, you just go to our Nitro bot, and you can do stuff like look at a work order, list a work order, close a work order. So I'm getting a little bit, if people are interested in this, we can get going. See, like here's a new work order form right here, and you can go in and select the different things and build right here in a mobile device on a browser and on Teams. So this is using Teams. It looks like something like this, I guess. And then we could list out the different assets and things like that, search. So there's a lot you can do. Here's a new work order. I mean, this bot gives here's some search results. So you can see, like, you can open up this one right here and see what it looks like in the form. I guess it's down at the bottom. If I go down the bottom here. Oh, message expired. Yeah, so I mean, I didn't plan to show this here, so I'm kind of going off the webinar track a little, but this is another option in mobile too, is to use the Teams. Use Teams for that, and we can do list all the work. Let's see, here's what I want to do: view all work orders. So this gives you a sense of what it looked like on mobile. I'm trying to, I don't have to log in. Yeah, see, I didn't get this set up. Anyways, I think it's okay. It's actually, I didn't set it up for this webinar. Oh, there it goes. Oh, there it goes. It goes anyway. So here's kind of a look that could be on mobile, something like this, and then you can click and open up that work order and see the details of it. Croquet, and then here, click here to view in browser. Things like this. So we can work with you in that way to make it make sense to you in the mobile situation. So anyway. That's a separate call. Maybe we have to have a one-on-one to go into more detail about that, right?
Yeah.
Kate?
So I think,
Oh,
so
it
I
says
think
the 1
we're
hour
sort
at
of,
the top of the hour here.
I don't want to take up people's time too much, but I guess if you want to discuss it further, number one, either contact myself, aidan@assetjourney.com, or give me a call, or you know, you can go on the website assetjourney.com. There's a contact us page there. Book a demo in. Also on there is some other things. There'll be a copy of this webinar on there, probably the last one as well. If you want to show anyone else, and just go from there.
Here it is right here.
Yeah,
Sales@assetjourney.com. Yeah.
yeah, there we go. You get sales. And then that's my number there. You can talk to me. But yeah, but thank you all for joining. I appreciate it. We really enjoy doing these. Apart from the fact that we don't get to speak to anyone, which is
I
not
know.
great.
I like talking to people in one-on-one. Yeah.
But hopefully we'll talk to some of you soon.
Okay, thank you everyone for attending. Appreciate you taking the time to see this, and hopefully we can help you on your asset journey, as we call it. Okay,
Thanks.
have a good day. Okay, bye-bye. Good day.
Thanks, bye.